Hello everyone, welcome back to Backlot Banter. I'm Tanner Dykstra, here to do a solo review of Jay Roach's The Roses, a new comedy, divorce, drama that is starring Benedict Cumberbatch, Olivia Coleman, as well as some other famous comedic players that you might recognize. Before I get into my thoughts on this film today, I want to remind you to subscribe to Backlot Banter if you are not already. Comment down below your thoughts on this film, like the video, and if you want to talk more about the film, you have a little tete-a-tete about The Roses, or any film in general, or any topic in general, really, you can join our Discord server. That link is in the description. Join that up. We'd love to chat with you. We have plenty of our friends in there that hey, came over from our YouTube videos, and you could be the very next one. But The Roses. This is a film that I think plenty of people saw the marketing for. They really made a hard push for this film. It has some big, British stars, but stars nonetheless, the world over, and Benedict Cumberbatch and Olivia Coleman in the title roles here. They are The Roses, after all. This is a remake of a Danny DeVito directed film called The War of the Roses, that, very much follows in that same footsteps of that film that I, granted, have not seen, but is about a couple who seems to have the perfect life, the perfect marriage, but, one little tip of the domino, one little thing goes wrong and it throws off the whole balance of their world, the whole balance of their relationship, and exposes some inherent issues, I believe, in their character, in their relationship as a married couple, and really escalates from there, as I'm sure you have seen in the trailers if you have seen them. But I thought this film was good. There's quite a few things I liked about it, namely the performances from Coleman and Cumberbatch. I think they have this real wry British sense of humor that serves the tone of the film well. I think they are probably, as you might want. You want your two stars to be the strongest comedic drivers of the film. I think they certainly are. Their chemistry together is what makes the film work at its best. I think perhaps that the other players in the film, we have some folks like Andy Samberg in this, Kate McKinnon, Allison Janney, Ncuti Gatwa, and some other folks as well, including a guy named Will Smith. I don't think it's that one. It's not that one. World-famous actor Will Smith is not in this film, but a different Will Smith is, funnily enough. But anyway, all those stars, the American stars, basically, of this film, I know Ncuti Gatwa is also British, but that's neither here nor there, they just don't operate, I think, at the same pace, at the same rhythm that Cumberbatch and Coleman are, particularly Samberg and McKinnon, who are veteran comedians at this point, having started out on SNL, both of them, and now graduated to starring and being in many comedy films over the past decade or so. They have a very particular sense of comedy that I don't think vibes with Coleman and Cumberbatch, and that dryness that I was talking about earlier, which works well when, the married couple is sort of snipping snide remarks at each other and being very, very passive-aggressive. McKinnon and Samberg are on a more absurd level of comedy here, certainly, and they really hit the same bits over and over, that they are also not happy in their marriage, but they're just making do, which I suppose is what Cumberbatch and Coleman are trying to do. Because for as much as the comedy is perhaps hit or miss in The Roses, you have Jay Roach here, who is, director of the Austin Powers trilogy, which is a lot more raunchy and absurd than stuff that's going on in The Roses, but a comedian director nonetheless. I think here that the drama also works most of the time, I think. Perhaps not enough time is paid to that interpersonal drama, or that is not fleshed out enough. You have these real heartfelt moments where Coleman and Cumberbatch are trying to dig to the depths of what went wrong and why perhaps they aren't compatible, but they've been married for a decade at this point, so is it too late to pull out of that? Were they wrong that whole time? That stuff is hard to deal with and to reconcile with, and you can feel that in their performance, but I don't know if we really incisively get into that stuff. And maybe that is not, the MO of The Roses. Maybe it is supposed to be a light, fun, have a laugh time that maybe plucks at your heartstrings every now and then. And for that, I think it is successful. I think it does accomplish those it checks those off, I think. But perhaps I was just thinking, or wanting a little bit more from talented performers like Cumberbatch and Coleman, who have done great work in great dramas for years and years now. And maybe McKinnon and Sandberg would have been a better fit for the couple in the more comedically absurd, comedically interested version of this film. But overall, I think the film is quite competently made. Jay Roach has never been an insane visual stylist by any means, but I think the film looks good. It's certainly, the production design is quite good, because you really get a sense of how wealthy Cumberbatch and Coleman are. I mean, they are, basically financing multi-million-dollar construction homes, because Coleman is basically becomes this chain restaurant entrepreneur over the course of the film. And to that end, I do want to say this, because I think the back and forth can get a little bit repetitive on I'm being mean to you, now I'm being mean to you, and we try to make up, but we end up just communicating and being snide and snippy at each other again. I think that back and forth is well done, but perhaps a little repetitive. It's sort of a one in the six in one hand, half dozen in the other kind of thing. But I do want to note that this is not delved into or acknowledged necessarily in the film, but Benedict Cumberbatch's character, whose name is, I can find it here, Theo Rose, is basically the starting point for what is going wrong in the relationship. He is basically the first one he basically throws the first stone after he is fired from his job for, he's an architect and one of his buildings is destroyed in a storm. So he loses his job and has to be a stay-at-home dad. And then his wife's restaurant suddenly takes off. And he can't really cope with that, can't really cope with not being the breadwinner anymore, and that is really where the issues start to arise, is him sort of belittling that, or really hammering home, like, hey, you're not with the kids enough, even though, just a couple months ago that was probably the opposite case, but hey, who am I? And that would be totally fine, that's probably intended for the film, but I feel like it doesn't really get there, it doesn't really work itself up to examining that. And even when they're really going off the rails with the ridiculous sabotaging plots that they have undergone, Olivia Coleman creates an AI video of Benedict Cumberbatch saying that he intentionally destroyed the building, and Benedict Cumberbatch doses some of the food at Coleman's restaurant with mushrooms. There are just things there where I'm like, Cumberbatch was started off being in the wrong and is doing way worse stuff in this part too. He is jeopardizing this entire restaurant chain that employs probably hundreds, if not thousands, of people across the country. And at a certain point, that is just something that overrides my reading of the film, overrides me having fun with it. It's just wow, he's just doing way worse stuff than she is. And again, I think that is perhaps intentional, perhaps not, and I don't know if that's good or not. That intentionality can be questioned. Anyway, you have this heated conclusion to the film where they're firing a gun at each other, and it's still played sort of comedically. And Benedict Cumberbatch is throwing oranges at Olivia Coleman as she fires a gun at him. It all is sort of absurd here. And then the film ends quite oddly. I need to acknowledge this. So I guess spoilers for The Roses if you've made it this far. The film ends, and after their whole kerfuffle, their fight, there's a gas leak from the stove, and they decide to have some sort of make-up sex at the end of this film. And to set the mood, they tell their AI house assistant to turn on the fireplace, and the film ends with a bright flash to white as you understand that the house and they exploded in a giant gas explosion. Just wanted to point that out, that's a really weird ending, and I don't think the film fully works itself up to that sort of darkly comedic ending. It is sort of as I mentioned, has this dry, wry sense of humor that doesn't really vibe with that ending, and perhaps it can even be absurd at points. I don't think like the McKinnon Sandberg stuff ever fully works. I think McKinnon's last appearance, where she has this whole sort of, it almost feels improvised thing, where she's talking about her crush on Benedict Cumberbatch's character, but how she ultimately will go back to her husband Andy Samberg at the end of the day. I think that's probably the best stuff there, but there are just moments of comedy where you're like, that doesn't feel fully calibrated altogether. So, yeah, I think it's a little bit of a complicated work, perhaps a little undercooked, perhaps a little repetitive at times, but the core pieces are strong. The actors are strong in it. The script is pretty solid, but perhaps can feel a little rote at times. So, all that being said, there's one more thing I wanted to mention, which is just a weird thing. So they have Olivia Coleman and Benedict Cumberbatch have a set of kids, and they are initially like some, they love eating Olivia Coleman's baked goods, her sweets. But then when Benedict Cumberbatch is the stay-at-home dad, he starts slowly transforming them into like ultra athletes, like ultra marathoners, which is not which just comes as a surprise. You're like, oh, that's Cumberbatch's deal, is that he's like an architect and also like obsessed with fitness, I guess. And then they go fully down this hole, and then Coleman is like, you took my children away from me, you made them these like ultra athletes, and she resents him for that. And they eventually get sent off. They're like 13 years old, but they get sent off to this like private school for elite child athletes in Florida while their parents stay home in California. It seems like a bit of a ham-fisted way to get the kids out of the picture so we can have the whole knockdown, drag-out, sabotage, shooting at each other with a gun, and ultimately blowing up the house ending. It's just weird. Like like those story choices just sort of struck me as weird. But there's also the scene where they FaceTime them and they tell them they're thinking about getting a divorce, and the kids are like relieved and say they always felt they should get divorced for years now. Odd stuff. I think, in this film, which doesn't really, that might not particularly strike most audiences as odd. Most audiences will probably just find this to be a nice, light, comedic, pull at the heartstrings every so often kind of movie. And I think it's successful on those marks. So I'll end up giving this just a solid score, above average movie. I'm going to go 6.5 on the roses, personally. Let me know if you really like this one, or if you didn't care for it. It seems to be getting some mixed reactions, some middling reviews on the whole, so I'd be interested to hear what other people think of this one. Go ahead, drop your thoughts down below in the comments, or join our Discord server. Until next time, thanks for watching.